Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is going to be my coverage of Lamzu's Thorn, their first ergonomic mouse that is packed differently than the Lamzu Atlantis with opticals in Mouse 1 and Mouse 2, and it does have a Nordic MCU as advertised, 3395, which does have 4K Hertz compatibility in the future with the purchase of a separate dongle. There's a few things that I like about the shape. There's a few things that I don't like about the shape, and I think the shape is something that, compared to other ergonomic mice, kind of put this lower on my list for ergos. But overall, there are a few things about the build that I should mention, and we can get into some comparisons with the mice that I have on my right. In terms of the build quality of the Lamzu Thorn, it is very good. Lamzu does a very good job in getting mice very, very light, but maintaining structural integrity. I don't have any flex on the shell squeezing very hard, and it also does not flex inward at all to make the side buttons protrude any more than they already do. Mouse 1 and Mouse 2, the optical switches are implemented very well. They really do feel quite close to mechanical switches in feel. I think they did a really good job with their opticals. In terms of side flex, there is minimal side flex. I'm happy to report that there is no switch grinding over those opticals, but there is a pretty significant amount of pre-travel on Mouse 1 and Mouse 2, and also a bit of post-travel. The thing that I don't like about the Lamzu Thorn are these massive side buttons that protrude just too much. And I'm guessing that they probably protrude like that because of how that curve is on the left side of the mouse. But when you look at something like the Zowie EC series, you can see the side buttons just are quite large as well, but don't protrude nearly as much. And it makes the side buttons on the Thorn just feel kind of out of place and very awkward. You certainly get used to it over time, but it is something that I would definitely point out because it just doesn't really feel in place with the rest of the mouse. In terms of the overall feel of the side buttons, they're very tactile, crispy, but there is a bit of pre-travel and a bit of post-travel on the side buttons as well, but not too much post-travel, so nothing that I kind of felt off in-game. Overall, Lamzu, in terms of build quality and integrity, they do quite a nice job. The Lamzu Thorn is a mouse that has a lot of underhand feel. It's bulbous, it's wide. That hump comes up more drastically than other ergos. I don't have an issue, I feel, with steady crosshair placement horizontally, but where I do feel an issue is with transitions. When I'm doing a 180, it's a little bit slower. It might take an extra movement or two. With just straight tracking and horizontal flicks that don't have a lot of verticality, I feel great. My sensor crosshair placement is perfect. It's tight, it's comfortable, it's steady. I don't have an issue in that regard, but where it does become an issue is verticality, because I lose too much inner hand maneuverability taking the mouse both up and down in my hand. So games that have a lot of vertical tracking, I do have quite a noticeable difference and worsened experience with vertical tracking. Now, the Lamzu Thorn compared to a Zowie EC3, it's not really a length issue. It's more of just how bulbous and high the hump feels in comparison to something like the EC3. You can see it's really not all that different in terms of its overall length. But where you do really feel the difference is in that little pocket of your hand. The EC3 kind of just fits into that perfectly. And even if you want a little bit more additional palm contact, you have a little bit more inner hand maneuverability that turns into a greater sense of ability in vertical tracking, be able to take that mouse down and back up with my fingers. The Lamzu Thorn being a bit fatter and more bulbous in its hump, and my hand sitting a little bit higher, it kind of makes you and leads you into wanting to palm this thing and get that inner hand lazy palm type grip. And with that, there's just a lack of inner hand maneuverability with that bulbousness and width of the mouse in general. Overall, if I wanted something along the lines of, and trust me, the EC1 is a monster compared to the Lamzu Thorn. It's another mouse that has issues in terms of inner hand verticality compared to something like the EC3 or the Ponage Stormbreaker. But comparing the Thorn, it kind of goes into that category as the EC1 for me. It's one of those lazy, long day drivers. If I don't want to care about my grip and I want something that's just comfortable to use, I would maybe go for something like the Thorn. I think I just get a little bit more even with the X-Lite V3 compared to the Lamzu Thorn. I think I get a little bit more inner hand movement with the mouse compared to the extra bulbousness and the way my hand lands on the Lamzu Thorn. Now, I love ergonomic mice. I like having an ergo in my top 5 because every once in a while I like to swap to an ergo and get that extra stability and or comfort. And I have that with the EC3, which will be in my top 5. The Zhaopin Z1 Pro, when you kind of swap to that from an ergo, you really do notice how much you are sacrificing in terms of that inner hand maneuverability when you go to something like a Lamzu Thorn or even an X-Lite or the Vaxi Outset. I almost feel like the Thorn wanted to be a mishmash crossover of the Outset and the Pulsar X-Lite V2, and it kind of falls into its own shape. It does feel a little different than both. I wouldn't necessarily call it a flat-out clone of any ergo on the market right now. It's also very similar to the YZAL, just it has more of a noticeable ergonomic curve on the left side of the mouse. Because the mouse doesn't have that really aggressive feeling ergo curve like an EC2 or an X-Lite, where it kind of comes up nicely on the left side and bottoms out very much on the top right as you get to mouse 2, it just doesn't feel as aggressive to me as an X-Lite or an EC2. And it kind of comes off as just an experience, again, that feels more of a palm-natured mouse, and one, again, that is not quite as fun or agile for me as an X-Lite or an EC2 or an EC3. When you compare it to the Vaxi Outset, the Outset is a very unique ergonomic shape, one that for me is just really beautiful. It's just one of those very comfortable mice that looks so unique compared to anything else. It is not quite as long as the Thorn and just has noticeable curvature differences, particularly on the height of mouse 1 and mouse 2. And it's just one that kind of comes up quite aggressively as well and rounds out a little bit quicker towards that mouse 2. The Thorn just, to me, feels a little bit flatter, almost like that bulbous nature of the YZAL, again, just with a little bit more curvature for your thumb on the left side of the mouse. So guys, that is going to be it for the Lamzu Thorn. It's not something shape-wise that I connected with, but it is something that if you're looking for a ergo that feels a little bit flatter across the mid-body and a little bit wide and bulbous, especially starting from the back, coming up to that high point of the hump, it could be something that might work for you. Keep that in mind, especially if your main game is not something that requires a lot of vertical tracking. I hope it helped, guys. If it did, please leave a sub to the channel, and I'll see you guys in the next review. Peace.